All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Lou Bryson, and Liz Rhoades. Plus, this week we have special guest Josh Wortman of Distill Ventures North America. I'm going to let your hosts give a more formal introduction to Josh in just a moment. But as always, before we get started, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co. Just want to point out a few different ways you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the show today. So on your right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to just say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. It's always great to see that. If you have a question for Josh or any of your hosts throughout the show today, there's a little button at the bottom of the screen that says ask a question. So just click or tap that button and type in your question, hit send. We'll be keeping an eye out for those. And last but not least, feel free to invite anyone you know to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it easy to do that. But with all of that out of the way, Marty, Liz, Lou, I'll turn things over to you now.
Thanks there, Will. Hey, I have some shocking news. My poor brother, he had his whole left side cut off the other day, but he's all right now. Love that one. It's
I'm never apologizing for a joke I tell again. Never.
Gonna be that kind of show, huh?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy. I'm a former senior master of whiskey from Diageo. Totally defrocked. Yeah, Josh. Defrocked. Thrown out. Cast off. That's all right. And then that was 14 glorious years of my life I'll never get back. And then for 18 glorious months that I wish never happened, I was the national brand representative for Benedictine liqueur. 8 other beautiful years, I was co-producer of the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo. And I can't believe I have them all over this house, but I don't have them here. Here, I got a mixer glass. There you go. For the last 7 years now, I am the sole brand representative for Glencairn Crystal. So the Crystal King of Chicago, as they call me. So there you go. All right. Down to you, little Malibu Liz Rhoades.
Thanks, Marty. Not sure what to think about that, but we'll roll with it.
Do you remember Malibu Barbie? She was tanned. She's the tanned. You're Malibu Liz Rhoades. I guess I'm going way back again.
Shouldn't asked.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Liz Rhoades, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have over a decade of experience across alcoholic beverage, spanning through several different sites and products, including beer, rum, vodka. But you guessed right. My particular favorite and expertise is, of course, in whiskey. That's literally why we're here. I spent most of my career at a tiny little mom and pop company known as Diageo, but I'm now currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. And hey, want to learn a little bit more about what I have going on? If you scroll down to the About the Host section, there's actually a link to my website. Check it out. Lou?
Thanks, Liz. I think the first thing I need to note before anything else is I'm the only person on stream who's never worked for Diageo. So with that out of the way, I am a whiskey writer. I was the managing editor of Whiskey Advocate magazine for about 20 years and currently freelancing, but I am a senior drinks writer for the award-winning Half Full segment of the Daily Beast. Thank you. And plugging my book, Whiskey Masterclass, an examination of all the things that go into and tasting.
Awesome.
Thank you. So that's what I'm doing. My whiskey today that I'm drinking is Last Feather Rye, an organic rye whiskey from Journeyman Distilling in a distillery in Three Oaks, Michigan. Cheers.
Cheers. Josh, you should read Lou's new book coming out, Just Staring at Bottles of Whiskey I Can't Afford. It's this Christmas. It'll be good.
You know, that there might actually be a book there.
Is it a self-help book?
Yeah. No, it's a book on theft.
There you go. Sly ways to leave a store without paying. Lizard,
Yes,
do you want to introduce your
I would
special
love
guest?
to. Let's jump right in. So, super excited to have Josh Wortman on the show today. I've known him for a couple years now. Super great guy. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. Josh has had about 12 years experience in the drinks industry, doing a few different things. So he worked in bars, bar management, did beverage and cocktail program development. He actually worked on the distribution side as well. But now he's the whiskey portfolio director at Distill Ventures North America. And we're going to dig into all of that, learn some more about that. So Josh, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to hang with you guys and talk whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very rare that we have somebody, an actual working individual as a guest. So that's wonderful. Usually they're always unemployed. Josh, tell us a little something. First off, give us a little more background on your history and how it led you into the booze industry and where you are today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think like all of us, we kind of, discovered spirits in different and interesting ways. I mean, I think even before I had become a bartender years ago, I was always really interested in spirits in general, specifically whiskey, just through travel and discovery. And, one of the things in particular I was thinking about a little while ago was, I went to one of those, cheesy bartending schools back in college, right? Or even before, it might have been high school. And I always wondered why, nobody made like the old drinks anymore. Like, why don't you see old fashions, right? I mean, this was like the 90s. It's like, how come everybody drinks these, right? And I'd order an old fashioned and people would look at me like, who's this grandpa, and but now, I mean, right, it's like, and then they find some like, old oranges to muddle or something, right? But now it's kind of, it's the most popular whiskey cocktail and one of the most popular cocktails. So it's just amazing how things have come along. So yeah, I was bartending back in the day, and had a circuitous route back to the bar about 11 or 12 years ago. And it was actually agave spirits that I really got into. This is 11 years ago, right at the forefront of tequila and mezcal. Had always been into whiskey, and after I was kind of running those bar programs, I started working for Martin Scott, that was part of Winebow, the distribution house, and got back with some great whiskey brands. I mean, at that time we were working with Balcones, Corsair, Smooth Ambler, Breckenridge, Charbet, Kilchoman, Isle of Arran, Tam Deuce. So some really, amazing.
Those were all the cool kids.
Whiskey, right? It was like great people. I mean, that's the thing too. It's these aren't just great whiskeys. I mean, it's just awesome people behind them to work with as well. So that was super fun. And but a lot of those brands we know got some strategic investors to support them, and as a result, distribution changes, right? And so around that time, the opportunity came up with Distill Ventures, and it was like, this is not something I had even necessarily thought about, but I was kind of in the midst of this trend of distillery acquisitions and thought, well, why not kind of help them from the start, or at least close to the start, right? And kind of work closer with them, just in a different way. So that's how I ended up working with Distill Ventures, and this was about 4 years ago. So it's been great.
And what is your position? What exactly do you do? Like I said, I picture you just walking into a distillery with a large satchel of cash, but it's more than that, I'm assuming.
Just
a little bit more.
One or two.
We prefer zero Halliburton cases when we show up.
David.
No, but first of all, we're a separate company from Diageo. So technically, I'm not a Diageo employee. Obviously, part of the family. certainly. Well, the idea was, this is 8 years ago. Frank Lampin and Shalem Patel founded Distill Ventures in the UK. They saw all this exciting activity happening in drinks, right? Especially in craft distilleries, right? And they wanted to start an accelerator to mentor them. And when they started looking for investors, Diageo, was on the list due to some people they knew. That's how that happened. Diageo knew that it made a lot of sense to, get involved with, drinks entrepreneurs at the earlier side of their journey, right? So that's how that happened. But yes, we facilitate the investment. Like what I do, I talk to entrepreneurs all the time. That's probably one of the best parts of the job. Before the pandemic, I would travel a lot more and visit more distilleries in person, which I miss. But we facilitate investments with some of these interesting brands. Now, 4 years later, after I joined, we have a nice portfolio that includes a good deal of whiskey brands, right? So my role, kind of whereas it started, working with brands on distribution, route to market, various elements that they need support with. Now I spend most of my time working with brands like Starward, Stauning, which just launched in the US, Westward, and some other brands in the portfolio as well. But so we after we kind of facilitate investment for them, it really depends on what the brands need, right? So, for example, Stauning in Denmark.
Josh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm more about the whiskey end of it, but I'm very much interested in the business. And when you say you facilitate investment, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
God, I'm not.
No,
right.
I agree with you, Lou.
Well,
what does that mean, Josh?
It basically means we're not the investors, Diageo is.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, really?
In a simple term. Right. I mean, that's the easiest way to kind of explain it.
So you're finding them.
We're finding them. Absolutely.
Okay.
We're finding them, introducing them to Diageo, and supporting them along the way, which Diageo, does as well, being a huge whiskey company, which we know. Yeah.
But now, wait a minute. You guys go out and you find investors who have more money than Diageo? How is that even possible? Bill Gates?
No, Diageo is the only investor.
They are the investor.
They are the investor, and they are the only investor.
Okay.
Yes.
I assume that's part of the deal.
Yeah, that's part of the deal. But back to kind of whiskey, right? In terms of that type of thing, right? So, well, let's put it this way: we've invested about $120 million in 15 plus companies in 8 years. Over half of that has gone into whiskey.
Wow.
Right. So, part of it has to do with the fact that, as we know, whiskey requires a significant investment, especially if you're talking about increasing production or building a distillery from scratch. For example, Stauning, when we started talking to them, this is back in 2014, 2015, they were producing about 25,000 liters of whiskey a year. They expanded to 1 million. Right. So that was kind of a big, that was a big deal, but it was, and Liz comes into this story at some point, which is really interesting.
Amazing.
But back to like the Diageo and their involvement. So Diageo owns the Abercrombie still manufacturer in Scotland. Right. And when they started discussions with Stauning about increasing production, the Abercrombie guys came, took a look. They saw these small kind of Portuguese alembics, direct fire, and we're like, okay, so we're gonna put in some big stills. What's your vision? They're like, no. We want more of these. We want a bunch more of these, alembics, direct fire. How many more? I don't know. We were thinking about 24, Portuguese style direct fire alembics, and the Abercrombie guy, we're like, we don't, uh, we don't do direct fire. We don't. It's not even. We haven't. We don't. It's not something we do. We'll think about it. They had to get some old guys out of retirement. There were some old retired Abercrombie guys who years ago had experience making direct fire pot stills. They brought these guys out of retirement and they built 24 2,000 liter stills. Wow. Direct fire. Pretty cool.
That's
cool.
The kind of resources you guys have, though. I mean, imagine that if you're anybody else, and so where can I find some old guys who know how to make direct fire? I don't
convince them
wow.
to come back.
Well, I think amazing. That, you guys probably know more about this, and especially, Liz as well, that, I've heard stories even from Vendôme of getting requests for direct fire stills and them being like, I don't know, are we just going to make this for somebody? Do they even know what they're doing? They may just like ruin it. Are they going to just break it because they don't know what they're doing? So I think that there is there's so many issues that can happen. And one of the reasons why when Liz got involved was with rye and scorching, and we're trying to scale this process, and Liz flew in and saved the day, basically. Maybe
Liz, yay for Liz.
A little bit more involved in that, but
I know. I know.
Well, but so in a case like that, if they wanted 24 direct fire stills, and I'm assuming they had the facilities, the building for it. I mean, now you have to make adjustments to that building as well.
It was a whole new building. It was a whole new construction, basically. Yeah.
You guys were like Santa Claus.
Pretty right. Pretty beautiful. It's a pretty beautiful space. They're on the west coast of Denmark, which is this kind of rugged area of the country, and they built the distillery kind of architecturally inspired by these fishing huts that they have on the coast there. It's really kind of dramatic. It's this drama element, which is nice to have.
Yeah, beautiful.
Nice to have.
They send all the whiskey out by Viking boat. That would be cool. Would you guys pay for that too? The Viking boats?
We'd have to find some really old guys.
Old Vikings.
Yeah.
They make them. They have that whole festival in the Shetland Islands every January.
Oh,
they burn the Viking boats.
Yeah.
So, Josh, there
Just
you go.
Don't burn one.
Source for you. Boom. What about you? Now, do you go out and scour are you just the US, or do you scour the world, you yourself?
I'm just the US. Yeah.
So do you get in your Distill Ventures bus and you just travel around? Like,
what are you looking for? How do you find what you're looking for? Or some other kind of U2 song that you want to work into it.
Will you do a new distillery? Someone who has all the wherewithal to do it, except for some of that expertise. We're just starting out, we have mentioned Chip Tate. So Chip Tate, once he left Balcones, was going to start his own distillery, and I believe Distill Ventures got involved with his new venture, his new distillery, which had oh no, you never did. It didn't happen.
Again, nice try, but
that's what I meant. That was
I know
word on the street.
Chip's amazing. Chip's
word
great.
on the street.
I'm excited about what he's doing for sure. But I think I mentioned a few companies that we've invested in. We leave it up to the companies to disclose whether or not they're part of it, right? Meaning if they want to disclose that Diageo is their investor, right? So it's up to them. So I think that it's great that more and more companies are public about it. It's great for us to be able to talk about it. the ones that don't, we just respect their stage. But back to your question as to what stage we get involved with, a couple things. One, it certainly depends. You gave an example of somebody who's kind of super capable. But we recently started a new program that we're calling the Pre-Accelerator, right? And it's for underrepresented founders, basically, right? I think the fact that the industry, as we know it, is not very diverse, and so we are with our partner Diageo, obviously, investing into underrepresented founders, right? So in that case, there are some opportunities for earlier stage, I would say. The idea is that these founders, get some initial funding to, for proof of concept, and the idea is that they would kind of graduate to the regular accelerator, right? So that's the idea with the Pre-Accelerator. For the regular accelerator, I think for the most part, the brands that we've invested in have some proof of concept, some liquid at least, right? And certainly with whiskey, there are examples, like Stauning, or maybe even slightly earlier. But I think with the example of Stauning, you have a small distillery, you have some liquid, it's very good, they're doing something interesting. But the product was commercialized. So I think for the most part, but that's not the main thing we look at, right? We look at founders. We care about founder-led brands, right? So who are the people and the team that have these amazing ideas, that are going to be the face of the brand, that are putting everything kind of into making this come to life. So that's hugely important. What is this? We're not just looking for a product. I think that the brand and the story and it's connected to the founder, sure, but what's the story there? Why does this exist, and how is this going to come to life, right? How is this going to connect with consumers? So the brand part is important. Scalability and supply chain, right? I think that speaking of World Whiskey and Stauning and Starward, there are all these great whiskeys that we taste and we read about around the world. One of the big barriers for us getting to enjoy them is scalability, right? We hear about all this stuff. It's like, why can't we get any of this here? It's like, well, because we only make a little bit, and we barely have enough to keep our locals happy, right? So at least the prospect of scalability has to be a part of the ambition. And then I guess the one thing that we all know is hugely important is the liquid and the product itself, right?
Thank
Like,
you.
I think
I was waiting for that one. Okay.
That's that's it's a key element, right? And I wouldn't say it, and I didn't say these in any particular order, certainly, but liquid is key, and what's interesting about it, how is it, right? Quality, but what's unique and special about it as well. So those are a few things that we look at, rather than a certain stage and specific time, right? There are all these kind of other things that we take into consideration when we talk to new brands.
How do they typically come to your attention?
Yeah.
So, some brands, apply on our website, right? Which is there, right?
Ballsy.
We why not, right? Or or some people will shoot me a message on LinkedIn. If they know someone, they'll get an intro. Anyone can certainly shoot me an email at josh@distilllventures.com. We do a lot of research too, right? Across categories all the time, just in terms of what's interesting, even if it's not an area that we're looking for right now. We try to work with researchers who either are close to a certain category or on the ground in a certain region, really kind of have their ear close to the ground in terms of what's new, to kind of uncover, what's going to be exciting down the road. So we do spend a lot of time on research, both as individuals and through our network, for sure.
And what's the ultimate goal? I mean, what's the end game? You have, is it like, Pernod Ricard with Smooth Ambler and Angel's Envy and Bacardi? I mean, eventually, is Diageo going to come in and say, you know what? The devil wants his due.
Whoa!
Come unto me. I demonize poor little Diageo. I love don't kill me.
So
demonize poor little Diageo.
Sure.
Words I never expected to hear.
Any founder like that goes into it with the idea that they may, ultimately have to sell their company, right? I mean, I think that's part of the idea, right? The idea is that at some point in the future, Diageo would have an opportunity to acquire, to fully invest in the company. Yes. So that is the ultimate goal.
And there seems to be a bit of an emphasis, as you were saying before, on whiskey. But I mean, but are you looking at other spirits, say rum, gin, liqueurs?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, sure. I spend most of my time on whiskey. As I mentioned, we've invested a lot in whiskey. Diageo's a big whiskey company, not the biggest whiskey company. So those things make a lot of sense. But we invest across categories, and what's also become a big part of our business is this non-alc category. One of the brands that really kicked it off was Seedlip, that Diageo fully acquired. It was one of the first Distill Ventures investments. Ben Branson was, really just a brilliant guy and an opportunity to make something that really is groundbreaking, right? We're so used to these, awful mocktails at bars, right? That,
he said it. I didn't. He said
are to be avoided, like the plague. But for people who maybe that they've had enough or they're not drinking, there's a huge opportunity for products that provide that experience and that occasion to be a part of something. So that's become a really interesting and important part of our business. There's a brand in Chicago, Ritual, that's a public brand in the portfolio. There's a brand, Siegfried, in Germany that has a non-alc gin. And what else can I say about that? Yeah. So yeah, we do look across categories, not just whiskey.
What would be something, because you guys have to be getting swamped. I mean, I run into distilleries all the time, and everybody wants someone to invest in there. And not only distilleries, but guys who want to start up brands. They're sourcing whiskey and going to vat it. How do you guys weed out? What would you look for?
How do you spot the losers? Is that what you're?
Yeah, there you go.
I mean,
say that, but yeah.
I mentioned it. A few of the qualifications that we looked at, that we look at in evaluating, but a lot of it is subjective, right? I think one of the things that we've done is expanded our search team. So now I have a colleague here in New York, Scott Rosenbaum, that manages the North American search program, which is great because the idea is that not only do we have different conversations with the founders and get to know them and their brand, but we can also sit as a team and taste and discuss the liquid as well. So after we have calls a variety of entrepreneurs. And yeah, we have a lot of calls and we taste a lot of products. We meet as a team, and discuss, right? Do we have all the information that we need to make a decision? And we also like staying in touch with companies, right? I mean, it could be a scenario where it is too early, right? Where, for whatever reason, the timing isn't right. And we would stay in touch, and especially now with the new pre-accelerator, there are a lot of different interesting conversations we've been having with a broad range of entrepreneurs, some of whom are new to the industry or coming from different industries with different ideas, right? So it's important, but it's fun. I mean, that's Marty, we were talking earlier about Indie Spirits Expo, and that's the fun part, right? Getting to know and meeting and seeing all this new innovation and how this industry continues to kind of surprise and grow.
Would people see you at whiskey shows, whiskey spirit shows? Going around.
I hope so.
Chatting, networking. Handing out cards, but secretly, kind of like the CIA.
Oh no! See, I pictured it more like that the guy in the Boston song, smoking a big cigar, driving a Cadillac, just tossing cards out the window. Hey, call me. That's how I saw it.
I'd love to, especially as whiskey shows are coming back online. I have a counterpart in the rest of the world, Charlie Steele, who's the whiskey portfolio director for the rest of the world. He's in Paris now, I guess. Whatever. There are a few shows going on right now in Europe that it has been exciting. So I hope more shows come back online here, and it's definitely been a missing piece, I think, for all of us, right? In terms of, and for the brands themselves, and meeting new people, right?
Well, I just got confirmation that the Victoria Whiskey Festival is going to happen up in BC in January. And Josh, I don't know if you've ever been. It's a fantastic show because it really changes. I love the city. It changes your mind about Canadian whiskey.
Yeah.
It's real. There's some really great stuff. Lots of small distilleries, doing wonderful stuff.
There's so much going on there.
Yeah.
I was in Victoria not too long ago, and they just had a wall of Victorian spirits. I mean, a lot of whiskeys on there as well, but it's just mind blowing. Kind of like we talk about. These guys are so small. They're making spirits for their local communities. They'd love to grow, I'm sure, but we don't hear about a lot of that stuff down here because they're either just in Victoria or just in Canada. Well, but I would love to go to that. That sounds awesome.
See, I would think those are the guys that need you a lot, because they were telling me that it was easier for them to get distribution in the U.S. than it was in other parts of Canada, and the other provinces. And so therefore they can't, in their own country, they can't really grow. It's just so much hassle and trouble. And that, and then, you can't get distribution in the States, but what good is it if you can't support it? And you can't support it unless you have the money, and if you don't generate the money in your own country, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
That's where Distill Ventures comes in. And you walk.
So you in Victoria.
Put on a Scottish accent and just go,
for fun.
Which a lot of them are Scots or Scottish descent over there.
Yeah, it's so much easier than doing a Canadian accent. It's subtle. So subtle.
Yeah, hey. That's a good whiskey, eh?
I mean, that's about it, right? What else is it? And a boot.
Process.
Process, yes.
Love stories.
So what, so tell us a bit about some of the success. I mean, Starward is a fantastic whiskey. I tasted that whiskey live in New York a couple of years back, and I was blown away by it. I thought it was wonderful. And then recently, I know here in Chicago, they have a guy based in Chicago who promotes it. Yeah, Jake. Yeah. He's awesome. Going to be on in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Back
He's actually on a plane to New York right now, so I may need to see him later today.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful whiskey. It's great to see it finally kind of getting, at least here in Chicago, it's getting recognition. I don't know how many markets it's in.
Yeah, it's in a bunch of markets in the States. I love Starward, and it's, so Dave Vitale, the founder, he got his start working with Bill Lark in Tasmania, making whiskey there. And one of his visions was kind of like we talked about earlier. It's like, there's these great whiskeys. Can we make them available? Can we make them accessible? Right. And so, his vision really was to make a whiskey that is, has the potential to be enjoyed by consumers outside of Australia, right? And now we see a lot of cool stuff happening in Australia. A lot of, I think we're going to see a lot more whiskeys come, which is amazing. A lot more spirits, but yeah, I think it's exciting what he's doing. I love the products, and he's also doing things that are, I think are going to be bigger trends down the road. For example, he makes a product called Twofold that it's a blended whiskey, right? It's aged wheat whiskey, it's aged grain whiskey blended with his malt whiskey, and it's delicious, right? And I think that there still is a preference amongst the whiskey crowd for malts over blends, but I do think we're going to start seeing some changes, and you're starting to see some innovation and batching and mingling, and so I don't know. I kind of love that. That was one of the pieces I was excited about the most to come to market, the blend, and I don't know. I'm excited to see more similar. I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't, even here in the States, as long as it's not flavored vodka, right? Yeah. We have our own issues with.
Well, I know of a couple. There's at least a few blended American whiskeys in the planning stages that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see it again. I used to drink Seagram 7.
Yeah.
7.7s back in my college days.
See, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be, or does it? I don't know. Does blended American have to be that low?
No.
So it can be more.
I don't think Seagram 7s originally was that low.
Mm-hmm.
And then they changed it. That's what.
I don't know. I did get a vintage bottle. Some guy brought it to a book signing, and it was like an early '60s vintage Seagram 7. I mean, we weren't mixing it; we were drinking it. It was good.
Yeah, that's the word on the street again. Huggy Bear and Rooster. They told me
hooked you on that.
Yeah, they changed the formula and they increased the.
Well, I mean, I remember getting a taste of pre-war White Horse that was pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a pre-war Johnny Walker Black.
Wow. Nice.
That's just how I roll.
See, and that's the thing, I am seeing some, I hesitate, but I'm not gonna. I'll just say it. Better blended scotches. People are jacking them up, and they're not as wimpy as they were.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I hope, because I got to be honest, Josh, when you were saying that, I'm like, yeah, I hear that, but are people really going to buy it? Because
I think that's where consumer education comes in, right? And
and the problem is we shot ourselves on this so badly over the last 30 years, like a blend. And now we got to turn around and actually, right?
That's fine.
It's true. At the same time, some of that was based on truth, in that there were a lot of so many brands that kind of ruined themselves. I mean, you look at the whole Four Roses thing.
Oh my God, I just had somebody tell me the other day, 4 Roses, that's shit. I'm like, really?
Yeah,
When was
not
the last
now.
time you had 4 Roses? That
But
was
that's
shit?
just it. It's this carryover from decades ago that people
Yeah.
believe. But you know, it's some of the brands have shot themselves in the foot and paid for it, and unfortunately, some really good whiskeys have paid for it.
But
And
I
the
think,
category pays for
you
it.
know, we've got young consumers, naive consumers, people who are coming to the category for the first time, don't know this stuff. I remember a
Right.
conversation I had with a whiskey buyer out on the West Coast, and he was just like, these people have never had the classics. They don't give a damn about the classics.
No.
They just want to try some new whiskeys. He's like, no preconceived notions.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's so true. There's a whole new generation of whiskey consumers. They are brought into it in different ways. They are interested in tasting new things. They don't necessarily have any brand loyalties to begin with, right?
And don't necessarily always develop any.
Yeah,
they just want to keep trying something new. I mean, I saw it for years in beer. They don't give a damn what they drank a month ago.
And is it still like that? Not to go away from whiskey, but is it still like that, or is it kind
in
of
beer?
Yeah, circling back.
Oh God, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I mean, and it's a problem they have because their product is so much less shelf stable than whiskey, especially the ones with all the damn fruit pulp in them. They're like shelf stable for about 3 weeks, and you know, a new brand will come in, everybody will buy a 4-pack, and then that's it.
But also, I mean, it's tough to have brand loyalty when the market is so much more crowded now than it was 30 years ago when I was bartending. I mean, we had this one 4 a.m. bar here in Chicago I worked at. We had just about everything anyone asked for, and it wasn't a lot. Nowadays, you walk into a whiskey bar, and it is like walking into the Library of Congress. You know, there's so many
somebody's
bottles
bound to say, "Oh, why don't you have this?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, that's kind of like us cranky guys, probably, right?
Man.
You know, or our generation, you know, I should say, right? But the younger kid who comes in there, he knows the bartender, and the bartender knows that, hey, last week you tried this. We just got this in. Try this. You know, we did a couple consumer studies during the pandemic, which was really interesting, and there is this kind of cycle of education, right? You have these new people come to the category, and they have someone who recommends someone. For some people, it was their guy at the store. It wasn't their bartender because the bars were closed. But that role, right? You know, that role of the person who recommends something, they in turn take that knowledge and they bring over that interesting bottle to their other friend who's also learning, right? So they're able to share and then learn new, and it becomes this sort of cycle of kind of continuous learning, which is really interesting.
Well,
and
also, cat bit me. It's also a case though of continuous marketing on part of the big companies, because I mean, we used to do it. You know, you find a bartender and they're known as gatekeepers. And so the gatekeeper, you try to turn them on to being a fan, sometimes incentives, but sometimes it was, even these cocktail competitions that the big brands put on. Well, you know, they just flew you to Greece to be part of this big international bartending competition. Yeah, you're going to probably promote their gin when you come back, because now your name's associated with it or something like that. Sometimes they're rebels. They stiff the poor company after they've spent thousands on them. But I mean, that's the case. But also, I was never that good of a bartender to be in a competition. But also too, Lou, back to your beer thing. the other problem is, how can you be brand loyal when you go into a bar? I've done this. You go into a bar and there's a beer I tried last time. It was delicious last time I was here. Hey, where's it gone? And now it's no longer on the tap because they switch it out every 3 months.
It's changed, yeah. Well, not to mention, there's just so damn many. You walk into a beer store and it's like a freaking Jackson Pollock painting. You know, there's just,
and that's just the label, right?
Right, right.
I mean, no, but I think that the craft beer producers also are putting out, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of different expressions because they can, and that's also what makes them kind of fun and interesting, and that you know, they have a local base who likes the fact that, you know, they're going to pick up something in a growler that's brand new, or the crowlers. But you know, I think whiskey, for better or worse, for the most part, doesn't have that luxury of putting out, you know, dozens of labels a year, right?
Yes,
so
I hope that's going to save whiskey.
I hope so, right? I hope so.
A bit longer.
But then, you know, the other thing with the young whiskey drinker, if they are listening to, you know, some gatekeeper or some folks they consider whiskey experts, they also want to try all the whiskeys so they can say they've tried all the whiskey. There is that kind of bragging.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't find that. Mostly I find they just want to try the best one so they can say they had the best one.
Oh, they do that too. But I mean, that's also the old guys. I mean, we've all been to Whiskey Fest in that first hour, man. That VIP. Oh my God. If you're ever behind a table at Whiskey Fest and you have you don't even see faces. It's just hands with the
Glencairns, yeah, right.
With the Glencairns. Well,
you know,
I think brands have to be more, I don't know, strategic, I guess, on education, right? You know, I think you can't just kind of go in and talk about your brand, right? Like, if you're going to add value to these gatekeepers, you know, you want to educate them on categories. And, you know, it's if I go into a bar and just talk to somebody about Starward, like, does that really help them know anything about what's interesting about Australian whiskey and how it fits into New World whiskey or any of this, or even, you know, so I think that, you know, the best gatekeepers, so to speak, like, want that education, right? They don't just want kind of, you know, a marketing spiel and sure, a trip can go a long way, you know, but, you know, these guys who see it as their career, you know, also want to continue to learn. So I think in master classes, which are still really important, which you used to do, Marty, all the time, right? I mean, it's this fun kind of, you know, education. So I was just talking with David Vitale. He did his first in-person master class since before the pandemic. And he just said it was like so great. The dynamic is so different, and people in person, engaging, asking questions. You know, so I hope we'll be seeing kind of more of those again.
Well, Josh, are you guys doing this? Does Distill Ventures like bring out a lot of your clients? I don't know if you call them clients. I guess they're clients or associates. Your distilling associates. You ever do like a portfolio event? You know, where you go around and meet the distillers and talk about their brands and maybe do breakout sessions and, you know, again, as part of the education, or no?
Yeah. I mean, certainly brands have done things together, right? I don't think it would be amazing if we could get everyone, you know, in the same room, but there have been collaborate. I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, I love it. Like, I'm stealing that idea, and the least we could do is we'll have Glencairns. But you know, we have done, you know, World Whiskey events, New World Whiskey events. We did a fun thing where David sent a red wine barrel to the US, and we filled it with new make. Well, I guess it was low wines. Technically, it was redistilled Westward in Alan Katz's still in Brooklyn. Alan's not, and those types of things of kind of fun, different kind of collaborations.
Yeah.
Well, especially now with the World of Whiskies being as they are. Well, when I was with Diageo, what I wanted to do once, it was my dream to bring like Cullen Megan from Bushmills and Evan Katnack, who was the distiller emeritus for the classic malts, maybe a Jim Beveridge, bring him in to talk about blended Scotch, Tom Bullitt with bourbon, John Lund, who was working at Dickel at the time. You bring your man Andrew Mackay down from Crown Royal. I mean, you had all these resources. I thought, man, imagine a master panel where these guys talked about
masters.
the difference of all their whiskeys and perceptions of them and everything else, but similarities. I just thought it would have been fascinating. Kind of a monster mash of
would have turned into a fist fight.
Yeah, it turned into everyone got drunk and just fell over, and it was horrible. Tom Bullitt beat up everybody. He's a lot stronger than he looks. A lot stronger.
Yeah.
But education is really a barrier, especially for the New World whiskeys, right? So there have been a lot of collaboration, not just brands, in our portfolio, but there have been panels with a bunch of world whiskey producers, M&H and Israel and Amrut, and just getting people on a room, either with a bunch of reporters or with some trade and consumers, just talking about what's interesting and why, because I think that still is kind of the biggest category development, right? I think that sure, maybe someday there'll be a wall of Australian whiskey, but right now, where do you put it in a retailer, right? You sort of have, you've got American and Scotch and Irish and Japanese now, but there didn't used to be a Japanese section a few years ago, right? Yeah. So I think it's kind of, how do you get this New World whiskey section, going and or at least have consumers know that, okay, there are all these whiskeys from all these parts of the world that I didn't know about. But as we know, you go into liquor stores and it's, I've seen, this was the best. I saw a bottle of Starward in between a bottle of Bailey's and Bibb and Tucker bourbon, right? It's like, this is the problem.
Sure.
Right, because retailers, you have to educate the retailers too, right? They don't necessarily know what to do.
You still find Southern Comfort in the bourbon aisles of a lot of stores.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you that's because, we moved into the liqueur aisle, but people were confused. Well,
are new
who confused them?
Looking for SoCo though? Is that a
huh?
Are new consumers looking to get into SoCo? Is that?
I'm sure young people are. Anything sweet, man. Those college towns.
I believe there are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's hurting.
So you mentioned a couple of things, just circling back kind of on the success or the drivers of success that the world whiskey category has had. You mentioned, earlier on distribution and scalability. Do you think that, for sure kind of dovetailed into the world whiskey trend as just getting it in front of people?
Yeah, it starts with, if you look at, it starts with innovation on the ground, right? Yeah. And then it starts with innovation in importing, right? For Raj to say, yeah, like Indian, single malt, right? 11 years ago, I think you have to have forward-thinking importers bringing, new cool stuff, to the market, distributors who value education-based selling and wanting to kind of diversify a portfolio, make it more interesting, competitive with this new trade we're talking about. So it's work. I don't know. I think that it's both innovation on starting with sort of brand importer side, but also a consumer to meet that, right? And I think that's what's happening now. because of whiskey, first of all, right? And new consumers within that. So I kind of look at it as like these two sort of sides that have to kind of meet in the right place at the right time.
Now, Josh, you have Starward and Westward, both seemingly. I didn't know either one was with Distill Ventures. So both of them seem like pretty established brands. I mean, still burgeoning.
Surprise.
But are you, what's your involvement with them at this stage? Is it helping them market? Is it helping them open up new markets? Is it, what do you guys do at this point of that development?
Sure. So, we work very closely with, brands on their, especially Starward on their kind of US, commercial and marketing plans. So we work really closely with their teams there. We don't, it's good. Like we don't run, these companies, Diageo is a minority owner, right? So these companies, we don't run their companies for them, right? We provide, advice, and everyone's different. But we do work, really closely with a brand like Starward that's new to the U.S. market. That most of their team is in Melbourne, Australia. So that's one piece. It's interesting with Westward too. American Single Malt. This is also a new challenging category, right? I think that the goal is to have it be a recognized, defined, category in the U.S., but still requires a lot of education out there. Stauning just launched, so with them, I've been, working really closely with the team and the sales team here on the ground in, various projects and kind of introductions and stuff like that. They're only, I think, 300 cases available for the States this year, so it's small. Wow. And they just launched in New York, but again, kind of keeping it focused, right? They still are. They're new here with the pandemic. They haven't been, allowed to travel here, so it really just has been, us and the sales team kind of managing things on the ground. So, that's a little bit more kind of, hands-on, I think, with the situation. Also, through the pandemic, getting really involved, working closely with the brands on their e-commerce strategies too, right? It still is going to be and continue to be a challenge due to the regulations here. But, I think we've all seen some progress, throughout, the pandemic, and as consumers, just like my ability to get product delivered to my house without, going anywhere. We know it's not great. And I get asked all the time, like, why can I get like this, pair of pants in this beautiful box and it's so easy? And then this thing shows up with a bunch of, newspaper wrapped, and it's the bottle of whiskey I ordered, and it's, horrible. Like, why, it's just, there's so many different, it's so fragmented in terms of, how it gets, from the order that a consumer places to who puts that bottle in a box to get to you, that, there's some work to be done, but I think we're getting there.
Josh, if you or Liz want to send a large sample bottle of the Denmark whiskey to me and Lou, you can send Lou's bottle to me, and I'll try to get it to him. Yeah, if you guys want to send that to me, I'll gladly give you.
I'll just tell him about it.
A hamburger on Thursday? Is that what you're? Yeah. Let's start. What you start
this Tuesday. I'm gladly.
Well,
Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Jake is going to be here, so if he has room in his bag,
There you go.
That's
see what I can
Starward.
do.
That's
Mr. Mule.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Jake's
Yeah.
coming back.
Right, because Chicago is a little bit of a challenge. Pennsylvania, not as much of a, at least shipping wise, right? How anyway.
Yeah, because nobody notices. I have to be honest.
Well, everything
they
goes
got
by
it stuffed
mule
so
train
far
in
up there, they never
Pennsylvania.
even know what's going on.
Where
Look,
Lou
I'll tell.
lives, it's all mule packs.
We'll put Jake in a car, and he'll just drive back to Chicago and make a stop in Pennsylvania. That's all.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect.
See, I'm telling you, clandestine. It's just like the CIA.
I'll even go up and meet him along I-80 if you want. I can do that. It's not a problem.
Lou just by an expressway. Jake Hookie. Hello. Pulls up.
Stop in, buddy. Stop in.
Like at the airport with the
Right.
Mhm.
Whiskey.
So,
At work today, I stopped by Dad's Hat and just walked in. The distiller obviously had no idea why I was there. I'm like, yeah, Herman said I was supposed to pick up a bottle of Bonded. And he's like, yeah? I'm like, yeah. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, I should try this gig more often.
I remember Gregor Katnak used to have to ship whiskeys home back to Scotland, and he just marked everything olive oil. And they must have thought he was Vito Corleone. The amount of olive oil he was sending back to Scotland.
So you mentioned before we had a number of comments and some questions as well that I want to dig into. But before I do, we mentioned earlier kind of a higher end blended whiskey. What other sort of trends do you kind of foresee popping up, or should pop up?
Or should pop up.
I like that question.
Or should pop up, right? Yeah, I mean, I definitely think blends. I think that we will start seeing more. I think as long as they could scale, right? I mean, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
More whiskeys from other regions, right? I mean, you mentioned interesting stuff happening in Canada, right? There's a lot of stuff happening in the Nordics, right outside of Denmark as well. I mean, if they can scale, I'd like to see more, right? So I think Mexico, there are people. I mean, I've always wondered with all that corn,
right?
Why is and we've seen a few brands do some interesting stuff, and I'm hearing of some other interesting things happening out there. So I do think, yeah, absolutely, right? Brazil, sure. So I do think that this trend from a whiskey perspective will continue, which I love. I also think that you mentioned Copper Works, right? That the upstream part of the process, more innovation happening there, right? I think we're past. I'm not past. I mean, like making solid bourbon in a traditional way, at scale, wonderful. I think we are going to see more. You're seeing it for sure, Liz. Experimentation on the fermentation side, in terms of in terms of kind of yeast, but also innovation in grain. Definitely gonna see more of that. I love that. That's great. I mean, people thinking about the raw materials. I mean, back to that consumer. The consumer, I think, is starting to kind of care about the people they buy products from and where they're from. I mean, I don't know that that's the main driver, but I do think that on a producer side, maybe, we're seeing a lot of new distillers out there that really care about this stuff, and we know that it can have a very beneficial impact on flavor. So wonderful, right? So those are a few really, really cool things I'd love to see more of. I mean, look, what Todd Leopold just did with the 3-chamber. I mean, amazing. That's that's the that type of next level innovation. Would love to see more of that. And I'm sure he has some other stuff up his sleeve as well, and pushing the envelope on American whiskey. Yeah, and his overalls, right?
But, I always worry though with that when you see a lot of innovation, that some distillers think, oh, what I need is a gimmick. I'll get a gimmick going, and that will sell my stuff. Because you have a lot of craft distillers out there who don't really taste other people's stuff. They have no real idea whether their stuff is good or not. They think it's good because that's all they ever taste, and it's their baby. And so they come up with a gimmick. Sometimes I just want to go in to a place and it's really nice and simple and basic, and it turns out they're just making really good stuff. It's just wow. It's totally back to basics. And
I think, Josh mentioned that earlier. It's, with all this innovation, with having a gimmick or doing something unique, I think at the end of the day, it has to be, a quality product, right?
Boils down to the juice in the bottle.
Again, going back to beer, the thing I always, whenever I hear innovation, I go back to a visit in the late 90s to Frederick Brewing Company in Frederick, Maryland, and they had blown up and were going like crazy. And they were putting everything they had into this hemp beer made with hemp seeds. And I could still picture the brewer sitting there running his fingers through a bowl. They had a bowl like that of hemp seeds on the bar. And he's like, no, it's not a gimmick. It's a novelty. Like, what? So I'm really suspicious of the word innovation.
Sure, you should be. I mean, but also, like, yes, the liquid has to be good, but also, like, will consumers care, right? I mean, I think that, I think that consumers are getting more. They're just a little bit more skeptical, I think, of certainly things that would be novelty, and you wouldn't want to use the word probably innovation. And it has to just be an accessible product for whatever reason, right? And like all that stuff that we're talking about, and yeast strains and this and that, most of the consumers aren't going to care. Don't even know what you're talking about, right?
Geeks like us,
right? I mean, I was talking with a brand about how to talk about the story of their mash bill on the label. And it was just, like the consumers don't even know like that a grain is in it. Right. So it's, we're talking about the wrong things here. It's like, yes, there are some who will care, as a producer, like this is what makes your liquid special, but you have to recognize that a good majority of the consumers, certainly, don't care right now. And if it doesn't taste good, they're not going to buy it again.
Yeah. Or sometimes they care too much. I remember after the whole Templeton, you had some people who got all upset about
sourcing.
I was at, I forget where it was. It was at one of the whiskey or spirit events. Maybe it was Tales Cocktail. And there were people holding up torches for Bullet bourbon because it's not really made in that's not they don't have a distillery, blah blah blah. They're getting all upset, and it's like, well, guys, if you just check the history, and it wasn't Templeton wasn't being frowned upon because they were sourcing. It was because they were kind of not telling the truth about
that.
Yeah, that was the big problem. It's just funny though, but people, it's like, well, that was my favorite bourbon. No, it's not. Why?
It was an interesting moment. It was a really interesting moment. And, what's funny now is, we really have, it's 180 degrees where, you see hashtag MGP juice, like on social media, right?
Yes.
And it's, sure, it's great liquid, but we really have come full circle from the, where is this from suspicion to, so what? It's great.
Yeah, what the Bloms did with their
Nodder.
Nodder, yeah. hate to break up the party.
Oh, you're gonna do that thing again, aren't you?
Oh man, she
But-
was like that mom who comes down to the basement and
I certainly wanted to talk more about regional styles and what what definitions exist out there, but unfortunately we don't have time. So quickly, I had several shout outs. So of course, Brad Krause. Hey Brad, good to see you on. Denise Jones is hi from Northern Nevada.
Hey Frank, my man Frank Patino is also got the Journeyman in Chicago.
Yeah. Lacey Thornton says hello from Traverse City.
Lace.
Reed says hey from San Francisco.
I love Sam Whittle's comment about overwhelming and costly to try all the beers out there, but I'm doing my best. God bless you.
Lee Wood says hi from Colorado. Hey Lee. And
when Liz Rhoades had to sign for some samples.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of shipping, Donald Snyder says hey from Florida. Hey Donald. Andrew Weber says hello from Corsair. Hey Andrew.
Hey Andrew.
And Donald, I really like your comment here because as soon as we were talking about direct fire, I instantly had that idea in my head as well. So I don't know if you're, communicating to me via brainwaves or something, but
he's scary that way.
An industry-wide certification training program to run a direct fire still would be great. And Sam Whittle seconds that, and I will third it. So all in favor.
Yeah.
Denise Jones also says visited Stauning in July of 2011. Danish peat, floor malting, local rye, great start, and nice whiskey early on. Awesome.
Cool.
Philip Morgan says Chip just got married, so congrats, Chip.
Congrats.
Again?
Wonderful.
And I think that's all that we had.
Experience.
Yeah. I guess marriage is really, really, really good. I wouldn't know.
I say yes.
I say yes.
Old Lou.
Yeah.
She's not
Lou,
even
the
in the
old
room.
married guy.
She's not even in the room.
Josh, thank you. This is a great hour. Thank you.
Yeah, really super.
Thank you guys
for joining us.
How do you want people to contact you? Just go to the website and bombard it?
Well, yeah. I mean, Josh at distillventures.com. I'm very, very accessible.
He has money coming out the wazoo, folks. So just contact him.
And
What's
on
coming
that
up
note,
next week, Liz?
yeah, so on that note, come back and join us next week with Jonathan and Robert Licorice from Iron Root.
Nice.
They were going to call it the Licorice Distillery, and then they're afraid they just get too many kids coming.
Oh my God.
Well, they really did. They really did.
Really? No.
Yeah.
Stop. Oh God.
And Marty, are you going to be live on the scene, live on the set over there?
Not yet. No, because that's Tuesday. I'm going down to beautiful Austin, Texas. If anyone's down there, please do not come up to me and touch me. I hate that.
He doesn't have bags of cash to give out.
Yeah, I have no cash.
He has Glencairns on every
wonderful
inch of his
glassware.
body.
But I will be seeing those boys. I'll be hopefully visiting Iron Root while I'm down there and seeing Robert, I believe, will be at Discus.
Perfect. Well, we'll look forward to the chat with them next week. Until then, Josh, thank you so much. It was a great hour plus.
Get the sample bottles. There, Josh.
Definitely. Thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
He does one.
Really fun.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.